The House on Mango Street.
We will now move on to The House on Manga Street by Sandracisneros. While I strongly advise you to read the complete piece, we were asked to analyze just the first 4 vignettes, and we also had the freedom to choose which one to read. So I have decided to go with the 4th vignette. That is one of my favorites from the book, and it's titled My Name. In English, my name means hope. In Spanish, it means too many letters. It means sadness. It means waiting. It is like the number 9. And magical. It is the Mexican records my father plays on Sunday mornings when he's shaving. Songs like sobbing. It was my great-grandmother's name, and now it is mine. She was a horsewoman too, born like me in the Chinese year of the horse, which is supposed to be bad luck if you're born female. But I think this is a Chinese lie, because the Chinese, like the Mexicans, don't like the women strong. My great-grandmother. I would have liked to have known her, a wild horse of a woman. So wild she wouldn't marry, until my great-grandfather threw a sack over her head and carried her off. Just like that, as if she were a fancy chandelier. That's the way he did it. And the story goes, she never forgave him. She looked out the window her whole life, the way so many women see their sadness on an elbow. I wonder if she made the best with what she got, or she was so sorry because she couldn't be all the things she wanted to be. Esperanza. I have inherited her name, but I don't want to inherit her place by the window. At school they say my name funny, as if the syllables were made out of tin and hurt the roof of your mouth. But in Spanish, my name is made out of a softer something, like silver. Not quite as thick as my sister's name, Magdalena, which is uglier than mine. Magdalena who at least can come home and become nanny, but I am always Esperanza. I would like to baptize myself under a new name. A name more like the real me, the one nobody sees. Esperanza Lisandra Meritzaur, ZZD 10th. Yes, something like ZZD 10th would do. Well, now for the analysis, we'll go bit by bit, starting with the author, who I have mentioned before, Sandracisneros. Sandra is a Mexican-American writer, poet, short storyteller, novelist, performer, and artist, born in Chicago in 1954. As a third child and the only daughter in a family of 7 children, which often made her feel isolated. Also, the constant migration of her family between Mexico and the USA instilled in her a sense of inhabiting 2 countries but not belonging to either culture. Her work deals with the formation of Chicana identity, exploring the challenges of being caught between Mexican and Anglo-American cultures, facing misogynist attitudes, and experiencing poverty. Her unique style made her receive numerous awards, including the NIA fellowships in both poetry and fiction, the Texas Medal of Arts, the MacArthur Fellowship, several honorary doctorates and national and international book awards, including Chicago's 5th Star Award, a Penn Center USA Literary Award, a Fairfax Prize, and the National Medal of Arts awarded to her by the President Obama in 2016. Her most famous work is, yes, you guessed right, The House on Manga Street, which was first published in 1984 and has sold over 6 million copies over the world. This is a coming-of-age novel, which means that we see how the main character, Esperanza Cordero, changes and grows during the year, both physically and emotionally. Yes, I'm sure you have read a dozen of novels with the same plot, but the distinctive aspect of Cisneros' work is that it's made up of 44 vignettes that are not quite poems and not quite full stories. What is a vignette, you may ask now? Well, the word vignette means little vine in French, and the name of the literary form comes from the drawings of little vines that 19th century printers used to decorate the little pages and the beginnings of chapters. So a vignette is kind of like an illustration. It's a short descriptive passage that's more about evoking meaning through imagery than it is about plot. They can be as short as 2 or 3 paragraphs long and sometimes contain internal rhymes. Our speaker, Esperanza, narrates these vignettes in first-person present tense, focusing on her day-to-day activities. This essentially allows the reader to leave the tale and go through the emotions at the same time as Esperanza. Most of the story is told through her point of view, as she sees them, but at certain times she narrates things that happen to her neighbors, for example, giving a picture of the neighborhood and showing the many influences surrounding her. From now on, we'll start breaking down each vignette, so please have your copy of the novel at hand and ready. First things first, so we'll start obviously with the first vignette, that is called The House on Manga Street. Here we have the introduction to the book's narrative style fragmentation. The story is broken down into a series of memories that don't follow a chronological order. Here we have Esperanza talking about where she lived before, coming back to her present, and she goes back to a particularly hurtful comment in the past. See? No chronological order. You'll see that in the following chapters, or vignettes, whatever you want to call it. In this bit, when she describes the house, she says the windows are so small you'd think they were holding their breath. This is obviously a personification, because balls don't actually breathe, and is used to accentuate how small the windows and therefore the house were. We also have the mention of a dream. The dream of a better, bigger, and beautiful house of her own where she'll finally feel like she belongs to. Remember this dream because it will be present throughout the whole novel. Another important part that we have here is this unfortunate commentary that is the first example of society shaming Esperanza for her ethnic and socioeconomic background. Also, I want you to notice how Esperanza introduces her whole family, but not herself. She's still constructing her name and identity for herself, and for now, her story is just about her observations and memories. Here is the name of the second vignette. At first, it might seem a bit frivolous to dedicate a whole vignette to her, but if we see beyond how curly or straight it might be, we'll realize a few things. The hair of every member of the Cordero family is different, just like their personalities are different. Esperanza uses a simile to describe her father's hair as tall, big, and with the quality of standing out, just like a person of color in a sea of white people. Carlos's hair is straight. It's not that it is, and it doesn't seem to be in need of a change. Nanny's hair is not easy to handle, it goes where it wants. Chooses the little girl. Kiki has the hair and mindset of a naive, young and adorable pup. Speranza's hair is a rebel, just like her. It never obeys rules and normatives. This also captures the discomfort with herself at this stage of her life through her dislike of an inability to tame her own hair. Cisneros uses his simple imagery to describe how the mother's hair, and therefore the mother herself, is a source of inspiration, beauty, admiration, warmth, love, and happiness. If you see the last bit of this vignette. Our next vignette is called Boys and Girls. As you can see, these novel's sentences are often broken down into small samples, especially in the shorter vignettes like this one, forcing the reader to take pauses. This improves the readability of the story and also makes them seem more impactful, allowing the emotions to come at you with greater impact. We encounter Esperanza's understanding of gender disparity in her society, as boys and girls are seen as two opposite and separate entities that should not mix in public, even if they are family and normally interact at home. Her desire of a best friend of her own, one that's not a part of her past and her family, is another hint at her ultimate goal, autonomy. We also have a metaphor at the end, where she calls herself a balloon tied to an anchor. Her freedom, her dreams, and hopes are being held down by the home she's been born into. Another thing that catches my attention is this clear separation and segregation of the Vargas, a part of the neighborhood and therefore the Mexican community, because you're seen as dangerous and a bad influence. This is, as SNL studies students would call, a case of authoring. We are now in our last vignette for today, and it's the one we have read before. And well, if you don't remember how it's called My Name. Here we have the speaker's introduction. Finally! Yes, I do realize I had spoiled you her name way before. Sorry, by the way. Well, her name, Esperanza, or Hope, is symbolic of both her current state and the book itself. Sad and longing to escape, but also hopeful and strong. We also have the first appearance of her Mexican heritage, that she relates to Southern songs and sad circumstances. We have a diss to sexism, not only in the Mexican community but in the Chinese one too, as both of them have this inferior conception of women's strength and their capacity to make their own decisions. Esperanza has inherited her name from her grandmother, who was treated as an object by her grandfather, who stole her and did with her what he pleased, while she didn't oppose any resistance. We could refer to this notion of women being weak and complacent and as internalized misogyny, proper of a sexist society. Esperanza makes a distinction of how her sister can go by two names and become two different people, which I couldn't help to relate to the borderlines and crossroads for Mendoza's work. Nanny can live in these two opposite sides of the cultural spectrum without having this take a toll on herself. Esperanza, on the other hand, is unable to do so. She doesn't feel like she belongs to either and isn't even sure who she is. She's still building her identity and has to be as unique as she is, as you can see with the names she is thinking of choosing in the future. Okay, folks, now that we have tackled down the analysis of the four vignettes, we can concentrate on our themes. First, we'll start with the most obvious one, identity, the search of identity. As every other coming-of-age novel in the face of the earth, we follow our protagonist through the trials and tribulations of discovering who she really is. We see her struggle to fit the puzzle pieces of her identity, her ethnicity, her gender, her cultural inheritance, her sexuality, her economic status, to name a few, into a coherent whole. In these four vignettes we have analyzed, Esperanza wants to change her name so that she can define herself on her own terms instead of a name that expresses her family heritage. She wants to separate herself from her parents and her younger sister in order to create her own life. And changing her name seems to her an important step into that direction. And how does this search unfold in the next vignette? Well, you'll have to keep reading. I'm not spoiling you anything else. As another theme, we have the questioning of traditional gender roles. Esperanza's desire to break free from her neighborhood is not limited to a desire to escape poverty, but also to escape the strict gender roles she finds oppressive within her culture. Esperanza's discovery of her own feminist values, which contradict the domestic roles prescribed for Chicana women, are a crucial part of her character development throughout the novel. As our third theme, we have society and class. Social and class distinctions are discussed in a sort of oblique way. They are never given a name. Our protagonist never comes out and says, "Hey, my family is poor." No. Instead, we figure out that poverty and class distinctions are an issue by pulling clues from the text. The residents of Manga Street live in crumbling, run-down apartments and houses in a dangerous part of the city. They also envy the beautiful, well-kept houses in nice neighborhoods. As our next theme, we have family. Esperanza's relationship with her family provides her with a sense of belonging, even when she does her best to deny it. Like a lot of teenagers, she doesn't always feel close to her family. Her sister is a drug, her parents are overly hopeful and liars, her brothers act entitled and follow those gender roles she despises. Never mind. The love and connection she feels to her family permeates this vignette, as we have seen in the second one, her. Next, we have foreignness and the other. Set in a Latino community in Chicago, the house on Manga Street contains many characters who are or have been foreigners in some way. The novel explores the feelings associated with foreignness and exile, like loneliness, isolation, shame, and a sense of not belonging. It also describes some of the social attitudes towards foreigners, like apathy or discrimination. As our last theme, we have home. What does make a home? What is the meaning of home? The ideas of houses and homes are central in this novel. Just look at the title. For Esperanza's mother and father, The idea of happiness and security is summed up in the image of a white house, big enough for their whole family. They pass this dream down to their children, but Esperanza's major challenge in this novel is to overcome her feelings of isolation and experience a sense of belonging, which is another way of saying she needs to feel at home. For her, it's important both to have a home that she can point at as a way of explaining a past that she can be proud of, and to have a vision of home in her future, something to inspire her. Now, talking about houses and titles. When we first read the title, it was obvious that we thought it would be a story of a house located in Manga Street, right? But automatically your brain starts to wonder, whose house is this? What's so special about it? Reading God's green earth is Manga Street. But if we go a little deeper, which we always should do while reading, we might realize that in literature, a house is never just a house. We associate certain ideas or feelings to it. We think of home, family, the sense of belonging, of safety, of warmth and love. We also think of a location, right? And also the architecture. If I say a house, you predictably will imagine a nice white picket fence in the suburbs. And maybe you'll never think about money, because boy, it is expensive to buy a house in Argentina nowadays. You should really feel powerful if you have made. The house on Manga Street is about all of these things, or well, kind of. It is about a home, a family, and a girl who wants to feel like she belongs to a community. But to a large extent, the story defies the expectations we have formulated based on the title. Manga Street isn't in the suburbia, nor it is nice, or has a glossy green backyard. This small and sad place is something that Esperanza tries to leave behind in order to be happy and successful. The way we see it, the house is a reflection of her past and her heritage, which many people condemn and shame her for. But she also has ties to it, her family, her friends, her culture, that she promises to never forget because they are a part of her, even if she sometimes wishes they weren't. We have come down now to the writing style. As we have stated before, the story is fragmented into 44 vignettes that don't necessarily follow a linear order. These vignettes are no longer than 2 pages and are made up of short but flowing sentences that do not use any punctuation marks. If you haven't noticed. Now you know. Cisneros wanted to write a book that can be opened at any page and will still make sense to the reader who doesn't know what came before or what comes after. Cisneros' work is packed full of imagery and metaphors, but it never becomes too muddled. Instead, the message is always clear without any room for misinterpretation. She wanted to have her work be easy to understand and light while we read it, because she wrote it for her people who were working or didn't have much experience while reading, or didn't have the time to read also. As for the tone is strategically controlled and evolves as the story progresses. Positivity pours through the fabric of misery until it eventually tears a hole through it. Esperanza plans to get out of Manga Street and all of its misery, but at the same time, she vows to never forget it. It's chased between critical and hopeful. The former is very apparent in the author dwells into the darker themes such as how men spoiler experiences distaste for these social norms is very apparent and strongly expressed, but is carefully balanced out, and eventually it will take over her undying hope for the future. Hope I didn't spoil many things, sorry, I forgot. To finish, because I'm sure this is getting way too long, I'm sorry. To finish, we wanted to reinforce the parameters of our analysis that I'm sure you already know, but better safe than sorry, right? First, we associated this novel with Chicana Literature. Sandracisneros is one of this movement's more prominent writers. Her work shines a light to her community's struggles to forge an hybrid identity while being judged by the two sides of their ethnic background. We also have seen Cisneros' work through the lens of the feminist theory. This novel's characters are affected by how femininity and female sexuality are defined within this patriarchal value system, and they must struggle to rework these definitions. Cisneros shows how Chicanas, like women of many other ethnicities, internalize these norms starting at a young age through informal education by family members and popular culture. She shows the abuse, violence, suffering, and also this companionship between women trying to overcome those horrible situations. And this is the end. Final, right? No, if I'm being serious, we hoped you liked this as much as we have liked reading this, making this presentation. We also hoped we helped you to understand a little bit more of this magnificent work that shines a light upon the victories, the struggles, the pain, the tears, the love, the laughter of this amazing culture and this amazing literature. So, well, stay home, stay safe, wash your hands. See you when we see you. Have a nice week. Bye bye.